All right, it is International Women's Day, March 8th, of course, 2023, and the theme for this year is Digital Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. We want to focus on women in cybersecurity jobs, and according to Cybersecurity Ventures, women hold 25% of cybersecurity jobs globally in 2022, up from 20% in 2019 and around 10% in 2013. They predict and forecast women will represent 30% of the global cybersecurity workforce by 2025. That will reach 35% by 2031. Joining us to discuss further is Confidence Staveley. She's a founder of Cybersafe Foundation. Confidence, good morning to you. Happy International Women's Day, and thanks for joining us. So what do you make of those numbers, that 25% figure for women globally, cybersecurity jobs? And do you know the number for Africa? I understand it may be single digits.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for wishing me happy International Women's Day. Definitely the numbers are really far. Africa generally is one continent that lags behind in terms of inclusion. It's the worst region in terms of gender inclusion, and cybersecurity is not an exception. Going by the World Bank statistics, women make up 9% of the cybersecurity workforce, even though women make up 50% of our general population as a continent. I mean, that's a far cry. That means that men hold 91% of the job opportunities that currently exist, and then women only have 9%. And that's explicable because there are so many barriers stacked up against women from very young ages to pursue careers in technology. So, and then cybersecurity is just a portion of that whole tech industry. So the numbers are abysmal, to say the least.
All right, so as far as what's being done about this, you are running a cybersecurity training program, Cyber Girls. Is the quest to get more women into the cybersecurity field up to private sector players like yourself, or does government have to step in?
I believe it's a collective effort. We're playing our role as a civil society organization and working with other public sector players to contribute to what the government, for example, is doing. But I won't sit here and pretend to you that we're taking enough action. We've had a lot of talks in conferences. Everyone is just talking about inclusion, but what we've been lagging behind on is action. And the actions here, by actions I mean policies to help incentivize more women to come into tech as a whole. Even skills acquisition that actually take people from being outside of cybersecurity into cybersecurity. Because, aside the discrimination, generally speaking, sometimes, other times it's not a matter of discrimination. It's the fact that there are very few men considering this as a career opportunity or seeing themselves possibly building a thriving career here. There are also fewer women who can afford the very expensive trainings that cybersecurity really requires. So it's for us to then take action to create programs that are female focused, that can enable the women gain the skills and become competitive. Because we don't want to be hired because we're women. We want to be hired because we are the best for the jobs anyway. We want to compete favorably like anyone would for opportunities. And so it's that upskilling component that I don't believe we're taking enough action towards, or even the right policies to drive change and actually scale the change we need to see to close that gap.
Now, you talked about competing favorably. I want to ask about public schools and whether they can compete with the necessary curriculums for tech. If you look at some figures, UNESCO saying about 129 million girls are out of school. Nigeria has about 20 million children out of school, but I guess even out of that number, I understand the figures from UNICEF say about 6 million girls in Nigeria are out of school. Can public schools compete to get these girls, as far as their curriculums are concerned, to be competitive in tech?
That's a fantastic question, and we can't talk about making change without the public sector. It's just not something that can happen, and that's where policies also come into play. Our curriculum as a whole is very, very archaic at the moment. There have been moves now to begin to see how we can integrate certain skills that are required for the 21st century to also be reflected in the way we teach and what we teach in our schools. And so if you look at that from that perspective, and also look at the perspective of the advocacy that needs to come into really driving girl child education, because in the work I have been doing, I have seen girls come to me and tell me when push has come to shove that their families have picked their brothers being educated over them. I have seen situations where boys have laptops and girls are put second place to access those same digital tools, aside many other issues that girls are placed second to access the digital world. So there needs to be a public-private sector partnership that government can run and drive to then bring these creative angles or the digital world back into the schools, and also reform our curriculum, make it possible for different stakeholders to contribute to that curriculum and drive the changes. I also tell you before we're closing out that answer that for a fact I've seen a lot of people apply to cyber girls specifically because they want to get hands-on experience, and they come from universities that they are studying cybersecurity at. And we find that a lot of times those people come to us because what they're teaching in school is just much theory with very little practical. So when they come out of the universities, they're not even valuable enough to employers. And this is also another issue we're having. When girls even get the education, it's not applicable enough because of the way our whole educational sector is set up. So these are all some of the reforms that really need to happen if you want to close that gap. Aside all of the stereotypes and myths that girls have to deal with. I mean, this year, I've had somebody tweet at me and tell me that women should be in industries that require people with emotions, and that able-bodied men are the ones required in cybersecurity. I mean, that is mind-blowing to hear in 2023.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to get such a tweet. It looks like there's still work to be done in terms of mindset. What kind of career does cybersecurity offer?
Oh, it's very fulfilling. I mean, cybersecurity is one place where you get the opportunity to protect civilization. I say that I say that way because a lot of people don't exactly see it this way. But today we're speaking and we're having this interview, right? We're enabled by technology. If this technology was hacked, maybe something different would be showing on your TV channels. And just talk about every single aspect of our civilization. We can't imagine life without digital banking right now. I've forgotten the last time I was on a Q&A bank, so all of those things, our whole civilization depends on if we can get enough people to do the work in cybersecurity that is very fulfilling. And if we're leaving behind half our population, we have an untapped resource bank that we definitely should be reaching out to, especially with how much talent shortage there is. We're missing out on the opportunity to actually leverage that resource and ensure that our civilization is protected from the bad actors.
Do we need tech hubs that cater exclusively to women as far as skills and career development is concerned?
I would definitely say big yes to that. And this is why. The gap is huge. The gap is huge. To close that, we need radical efforts to be able to close that gap. Now, let me say that, let me bring that stat and apply it more. That means in every 10 cybersecurity professionals you find, there will only be one woman. So imagine if there was a room of 20 cybersecurity professionals, only 2 will be women. By that stats by the World Bank. So it's very important for us to look at it from that lens because it gives us a better picture. Now, when we have female-focused programs, female-focused hubs, there is now channeled attention to increase that number. I'll give an example with Cyber Girls. We're able to now do 500 girls across 22 African countries, which means that countries like Kenya, Namibia, Ghana, South Africa will get this huge influx and then pump of women coming in. And that's what we need to do, not just as Cybersafe Foundation, because I'm not going to sit here and think Cybersafe Foundation alone holds all of the keys to solving this problem. But we need that female-focused and very radical move to be able to get enough women within this period to say by 2030, this number should look very different.
All right, you mentioned some African nations there as far as your spread. What would you say are the top 3 African nations to be in if you're a woman in tech or aspire to have a career in technology?
Top of my head, I would say Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. Innovation there is really blooming and really flying. I mean, I am going to be in Kenya towards the end of this month to actually launch the cohort. We also have top numbers coming in from South Africa as well. So a lot of innovation is happening in these places, and they're sort of like hubs. Nigeria is a hub for Africa and also for West Africa. Kenya is a great hub for East Africa and the amazing stuff that's happening there. And then South Africa is also playing a very major role in Southern Africa and, of course, the whole African tech ecosystem as a whole.
All right, Confidence Staveley, founder of Cybersafe Foundation. Thank you so much for your time talking to us on International Women's Day about technology careers, particularly cybersecurity for women. Appreciate your time.